Mark Pope and Kentucky basketball are down several pieces. So can they avoid disaster tomorrow against a pretty good Vanderbilt squad?
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be previewing Kentucky basketball's rematch with the Vanderbilt Commodores. Bit of a different look for the Cats this time around, obviously down 3 different players heading into this one. What can you avoid this time? A lot of different struggles in Nashville in the first go-round, losing that game by 5 points. Can Kentucky turn it around here? I absolutely believe they can, and I'll tell you how. Also on today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about Kentucky's point guard problems. I think there is a pretty clear answer as to what they need to do right now, and it might go against some of the wishes of Mark Pope. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms, and if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. Thank you guys so much to everyone who has. Like the video if you enjoy. Let's go ahead and get into it. So Kentucky basketball rematching with the Vanderbilt Commodores after losing by 5. Earlier this year, 74-69 was the final score. Cats turned the ball over a ton in that first game, and that's where we're going to start. What can you avoid here on Wednesday night? What can you make sure doesn't happen again? First and foremost, I think it's pretty clear, Kentucky has to take care of the ball. In that first matchup, Kentucky turned the ball over 17 times, and a lot of the turnovers were just not forced. And yes, this Vanderbilt team, we'll get to it later on, kind of dissecting more kind of what they do well, kind of giving everybody a refresher in case you didn't see the first preview episode. This Vanderbilt team does like to create chaos, and they use some pace and some aggression off of that. But Kentucky themselves was just, I think, lackadaisical with the basketball, if that's the term to use there, just careless. Throwing the ball out of bounds, throwing the ball to Vanderbilt players, and if you watch that Texas game, you know Kentucky's point guard position, they did that a couple of different times in some crucial moments. So you cannot have stupid turnovers in this game. That is the biggest thing you cannot let happen again. You have to avoid just throwing the ball away, which is, it seems a lot easier said than done, right? Especially whenever you start to consider the pressure that Vanderbilt puts on their opponents. But it really is, to an extent, like that easy at different points. Just take care of the ball. Don't be throwing it to a Vanderbilt player when you're trying to initiate a set. Don't be throwing the ball out of bounds whenever you're going to, it wouldn't be Lamont Butler in this case because he'll be out, but don't go and try and throw the ball to Amari, have the ball batted away by a Vanderbilt player, and don't try and initiate the offense by throwing the ball to him again. Do something else. You have to take care of the ball in crucial moments. And a second thing you need to get to, if you're going to let Vanderbilt, get out in transition, if things are going to happen where you are kind of out of sorts defensively because of what you do on offense, you can't leave players open. Vanderbilt hit 12 threes against Kentucky in the first contest. You cannot let that happen again. And specifically, you can't let guys that normally don't hit outside shots take and then make outside shots. You're looking at a guy like Jalen Carey. You're looking at a guy like, although he is shooting 38% from beyond the arc, somebody like Devin McLaughlin. You cannot let those guys just be open from beyond the arc and let them take those shots. You have to close out. You did such a good job of it over 2 games there against South Carolina and then against Tennessee. Get out, put your hand up, contest legally. Whatever you got to do to be as physical as possible and contest shots. And that takes us to the third thing here. What can't you let happen again? Well, you can't just give up. You cannot have a lack of aggression throughout the entirety of the game. In case you didn't see it, Mark Pope showing actually his team in a recent practice, before a recent practice during a film review. He was showing them clips from the different fights during the 4 Nationals hockey games here as of late with the United States, and about how Kentucky needs to take some of that grit, some of that physicality, some of that emotion, and pour it out onto the floor. Play like you want to win. Fight like you want to win. And you have to do that throughout the entirety of the game. As we all know, Kentucky in that first game against Vanderbilt got down 41-27 after giving up just a massive run there towards the end of the first half. I'm actually going to pull it up, 16-2 run. Then Kentucky had an 11-0 run to start the second half, and then they had a 17-2 run shortly after that to get back into the game and then take I think it was a 7-point lead, 58-51, and then you collapsed. You cannot just be chaotic throughout the entirety of the game. You have to keep the aggression consistent. And that gets me to the fourth thing, which we all just kind of said here. You have to build a lead, and then you have to keep it. You cannot just get out, play hard for 20 minutes, get up by 10, and then decide that that's good enough, and you're going to play more conservatively. You're going to start to ease up on defense. Great teams don't do that. And I think that this Kentucky squad has a very high ceiling, even without the players that they have. Despite how difficult it might be to win against some really good competition, and I know Kentucky has had some issues playing against lesser competition, despite inconsistencies, I still think that they've got a chance to be dominant every time they step out onto the floor because of how good their offense can be. And Vanderbilt is not a slouch team. If I'm not mistaken, this is not a quad 1 opportunity. I believe it's a quad 2. But you have to get up for this. This team has already beaten you once, and they're really good. Turnovers, leaving players open from 3, a lack of aggression, having a lead and then just giving it up by being a little careless at times in the second half. These are the things that you cannot let happen again. Let's talk a little bit about point guard problems. Let's talk about X factors. We'll talk more about what Vanderbilt does well, what they've struggled with, what they've been doing since that Kentucky game. They've kind of been on a skid here, and then we'll get to keys to the game at the end of the show. Before we do all that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at TurboTax. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then it was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were ever going to get any money back. Now, Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who is matched to your unique tax situation. It's an expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. And while they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed, all while you go about your day. There's no stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now, this right here is Taxes. It's Intuit TurboTax. You can get an expert now over on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. You can see guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, continuing along here on the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. Again, if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. We are previewing Kentucky basketball's rematch with the Vanderbilt Commodores. Vanderbilt sitting at 17-8, just like Kentucky. Kentucky at 6-6 in SEC play. Vandy now 5-7. After they beat Kentucky, they went on a skid, have lost 4 out of their last 5 contests with a win right smack dab in the middle against 35th ranked Texas, at least according to KenPom. It's a pretty good Texas squad that we know Kentucky lost to, that Vanderbilt was able to find a win against. But outside of that, they played against some really, really good competition. Florida, Auburn, Tennessee, kept some things close against some of those opponents, was blown out by 30 on the road at Oklahoma to start that skid. But here they are now against a team that they've already beaten, down several players. It's going to be a very frustrating and difficult game, and I think it starts with what Kentucky is dealing with at point guard. As of right now, at least what Pope said in the pregame before the Texas game, Kentucky has 4 different players playing a hybrid point guard position. If my understanding is that is Owe, Brea, Williams, and Perry, with Perry getting the start last game at point guard. I don't think Travis needs to see the floor a ton in this one. And that goes against kind of what Pope has said. It goes against kind of what he has, discussed as far as keeping the rotation, expanding the rotation instead of shortening it, I should say. He doesn't want to get this thing tighter down the stretch because he believes in his guys and he thinks that they can execute. I disagree. I think that Travis Perry has proven through several different important games that unless he has players surrounding him that can boost his abilities, he is not capable of playing up to standard, at least relative to a guy like Butler or somebody like Kriisa or Jax. Perry in that most recent game against Texas had 6 points. He was 0 of 3 from inside the arc. He was 2 of 5 from outside. He would have been 1 of 4 if not for that final garbage time 3 that he hit. He had 3 assists, but 3 turnovers and 3 fouls in 28 minutes. Now, I'm not sitting here expecting him to go 2 of 8 from the floor every single time he steps out. But that doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it at home. It doesn't cut it on the road. He's not shooting well at all from inside the arc. He is not a threat to drive, and he is very easy to pressure into turnovers. You have to be able to put something more physical and more capable out there. What I don't understand is why Kobe Brea is not getting more run at PG. I think it's because Kentucky just does not think that he is that valuable relative to what he can do off ball, and so they're willing to take their chances with the 3 other guys that they now have playing point guard outside of him. They're going to utilize him more at shooting guard and let the other 3 guys rotate through to give him more shooting opportunities. But whenever you do what you did against Texas, which I think he went like 1 of 4, 1 of 5, that's not going to cut it. Brea right now is the best ball handler that you could put on the floor. That's healthy, in my opinion. I think that he should get more run, and I think you should try, if anything, to put Travis at shooting guard. Let him be a catch-and-shoot spot-up guy because he is not capable of running this offense. Not at his size and not with his experience. Amari can't run point all the time. And Otega Owe, frankly, I don't think is that great of a ball handler. He had 4 turnovers against Vanderbilt last go-around, by the way. The centers, I should say, instead of just Amari, can't handle point all the time. Garrison had 4 turnovers against Vanderbilt also last go-around. Butler had 6. He's not playing in this game, but it shows you the potential for disaster with 4 different guys that you aren't really comfortable initiating your stuff. If your best guy couldn't take care of the ball, what are these 4 going to do, right? It's very troublesome. I think that you need to have Brea here at PG. I think you need to have Owe at your 2. Let Brea and Owe switch between it. I think you need to have Trent Noah start this game. I think he needs to be your 3. I think it either needs to be Almanor or Carr at your 4, and it needs to be Amari Williams at your 5. And I think Amari needs to do more in the paint this game because of how well he's played over these last several games for the Cats down low. You can actually take a look here. 22 points against Arkansas, 12 points, triple-double against Ole Miss, 10 points on efficient shooting against South Carolina, 6 points against Tennessee, but I think it was like plus 20 or something like that, and plus minus. He had a couple assists, a block, was really valuable on defense. 18 points against Texas with 6 rebounds, 3 assists, a block, and a steal. I think you need to utilize Amari a little bit differently. I think you need to make him into more of an aggressive player down low, because if you can, it will create some things for your offense. Because right now, you don't have a player outside of Owe that can drive to the basket and score. You don't. Butler's out, and Jax couldn't really do it to begin with, but you don't have guys that are physical enough to handle that. So you need something at the rim to open up the three-point shooting, because you're getting run off the line, you're not getting enough shots off. I think that if you make Amari into more of a post presence in this one, and he's able to hit shots, which I hope he would be able to against Vanderbilt. We'll get to their stuff in a second. If he's able to hit some shots, then it will make Vanderbilt respect the rim, at least to an extent, and then you can start to work some inside-out stuff. I think that is the best way to do this. I think Kentucky should utilize the pick and roll a little bit more instead of having your center be the guy initiating the offense at the top all the time. I think that this is a team in Vanderbilt that you could expose in that area, especially with the way that Williams can handle getting down the lane. If he would be more aggressive going up and finishing or dunking the ball, I think that this would be, you could make the best out of the situation. But I don't think Kentucky's going to do any of that. I think they're going to run Travis at the point. I think they're going to start him. I think Brea is going to try and play shooting guard, and it's just up to him as to whether or not he hits the shots. I think Amari is going to be the guy that's running the offense at the top for an uncomfortable amount of time. We'll see if he turns the ball over or not. You'll have Otega Owe taking inefficient shots at the rim, and it'll just be up to Almanor, Garrison, Noah, if they can hit outside shots to make this one competitive or winnable. You get to your two X factors here, and I mentioned one of them just a second ago. We'll talk about Vanderbilt's first. Devin McLaughlin, in case you don't remember, he did some good things against Kentucky this last go-around. Finished with a couple of big offensive boards, a couple of big threes. He is a very versatile weapon for them at that 4 spot. He plays a little bit of center as well, actually pretty much splits time between the two. Shooting 69% inside the arc, 38.5% outside so far this year. You have to be able to contest him from 3 when he gets open, and he cannot grab second chance opportunities. Period. You have to shut that down. Then you've got to take it away. He can't turn the ball over, and he has to be efficient at the rim. If you can do those two things and he can score efficiently, he's your X factor. Vanderbilt lacks height. They are the worst team in the SEC defensively, and they obliterate people in pick and roll. Kentucky has to be disciplined, aggressive, close out on kickouts. Your keys, as we wrap up here. Less Travis Perry minutes. I think more players elsewhere need to contribute. Jason Edwards, their lead guard, he can't run wild on you. You can't let him just be fogging up stuff all over the place and hitting it. So him and McLaughlin are the two that I'm really worried about. Let's see what Hogard does as well. And you can't turn the ball over. If you run different stuff at point, make Amari more into a post player, shut down Devin McLaughlin, run with Jason Edwards, I think you're going to have a really good chance to win this game. I don't have a prediction for you. I'm worried about this one, just frankly. Let me know what you think in the comments below. We'll see. You got a big game on Saturday against Alabama, and you got this one before it. You can't be looking ahead, and frankly, I don't know if Kentucky's got the guys to look ahead right now. So you can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. You can follow me on Twitter at Lance_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.